Hey folks, welcome to the Fairfax Sports Report. We've got an extra special show for you here tonight from Merrifield. We've got West Springfield High School quarterback Peter Lollick joining us tonight here in studio. He's going to answer the tough questions and tell us why he decided to go to UVA. He's going to tell us about the highest scoring game in the Virginia High School League's history, a great game that he got a chance to participate in. And we're going to talk about the Patriot District with Peter. We're also going to talk about the rest of the Northern Region sports scene here in the Northern Region. Football is raging here, about to get into the playoffs, so we've got an extra special show for you here tonight. Before we get to that, though, we want to get to the folks that make this show possible. Of course, we're talking about our underwriters. CCI Screen Printing for all your screen printing needs, 703-978-0257. Quality Care Ford Service Center, servicing all makes and models, 703-383-6299. Well, guys, first of all, I want to introduce, of course, my co-hosts, Paul Frummelt from the Connection newspapers, and to his left is, of course, Peter Lollick joining us here tonight, Lollick from West Springfield High School, and Mirza Krispahich of the Connection newspapers. Well, Peter, you're wearing your Virginia shirt, so I don't think it's any question as to where you're going for your collegiate football career. Just want to ask you a little bit about what got you into football before we get going into the Patriot District. I talked to you earlier this week, and you said you played baseball. Tell us a little bit about how your baseball career ended and how you ended up being the quarterback.
Well, when I was in 7th grade, I was a pitcher, and they liked to throw me a lot, and I just threw my arm out, basically. So my dad wouldn't let me play baseball anymore. And I was always too big to play football. And then they created the Unlimited Weight League, and I played that. That's how I started in 7th grade.
So, Peter, obviously your arm has always been there being a pitcher, and obviously now as a very successful quarterback and headed to UVA. Also, your athletic lineage is there. Tell us a little bit about how you got your name, Peter. Why your name Peter?
Well, I was named after Pistol Pete Maravich. He's a family friend, and he died the same year I was born, real close, so they named me after him.
Pistol Pete, obviously one of the greatest NBA basketball players of all time. And Peter's told us here tonight that he's also going to be playing a little basketball with West Springfield. Did so in his freshman and sophomore year, and he's going to be doing that again as a senior. I want to get to your decision to go to the University of Virginia. Tell us a little bit about what schools were recruiting you and why you ended up choosing UVA.
Well, I was recruited all over the country, and I liked UVA because it felt like home, and the players there are great, and the coaching staff gave me the best opportunity, I think, to succeed.
And one of your goals, and you mentioned success, and one of your goals that you're measuring success by is to get to the pro level. Tell us a little bit about what you think it's going to take to get there.
Well, that's the ultimate goal for me, and I want to. Right now, I don't think I'm ready. I know I'm not, and I'm just trying to work to get to that goal.
Peter, I saw you play this year against T.C. Williams. I've seen you play a couple of times, but one thing that I noticed against T.C. Williams was towards the end of the second quarter, you guys got the ball. You drove down for a touchdown in less than a minute. You got the ball again, and you drove down for a touchdown in a minute 03. Do you think there is such a thing as a quarterback who is a little too effective, given that the defense is out there on the field so much?
Well, it's not that easy. If I could do that every time, I wish we could. But sometimes it's only a minute, and sometimes we have drives that are 8 minutes, 9 minutes.
And folks, we've got some information that we want to show you about Peter and some of his accomplishments over at West Springfield High School. He's one of, he holds basically all the records for the high school, passing records and whatnot. But this is his numbers over the years. He's been starting solid now for 2 years and got a couple starts in your sophomore year, if I'm correct. So these are about 2.5-year numbers here. The career attempts, 638, career completions, 384, and 60% of his passes have been completed, and 5,337 yards. Try to wrap your head around that, folks at home. To pass for 5,337 yards in just 23 games, I believe, is the math that we crunched before this show, and 48 career touchdowns, and he's only been sacked 7 times in those games. Those are some very, very impressive numbers. You've also got some pretty big accomplishments, too. I just want to get a chance to read these off. You've thrown for 232 yards a game in 23 games. That's current through this last week. 192 completions in the 2005 season, ranks as the 7th best in the Virginia High School League's history for completions in a season. It's also the 3rd best in a 10-game season. Most guys, they throw for that many completions. They're playing in the playoffs. They're playing, 13 games. 384 completions in his career ranks you, Peter, at number 11 on the list in the Virginia High School League's history in completions in a career. And at this point, the math we've done is you're completing just under 20 passes a game for your career. So at that rate, you're going to keep climbing. I think these are probably all foreign numbers to you. I know a lot of guys don't even do the math. They don't think about it. But no, and there's a couple of other things that we'll get to in the show that you've obviously accomplished. But knowing that those numbers are there and attainable, I'm sure you don't do the math every night on a calculator, but you've got to be thinking at some point, obviously you guys want to succeed as a team, but to put up those types of numbers, is there any pressure knowing that scouts are looking at you and all these stats mean so much to other people?
Well, I think the number one goal is to have a successful team, and when it's a team, our goal on offense is to score every time we touch the ball, and we can do that. We have like halves where we score every time,
right?
And then the second half we come out and sputter a little bit. Our goal is to just be steady throughout the whole game.
Now, Peter, talking about going through the offense, obviously you're an offensive leader on the team, but I mean, how tough is it for you on the sidelines while the defense is playing, and you see them faltering, you see them giving up points? Does it get you down? Does it stop your motivation in the game at all?
Definitely not. It probably helps my motivation because we're in a lot of tight games, so there's never any time for us to let down our guard.
Peter, you had a game earlier in the season when there's two, I guess, a lot of games are very memorable probably to you for many different reasons, but a game that I'm sure bugs you still is the Edison game that, you'd had a difficult time, 5 interceptions. I know a lot of those were off tip balls and whatnot, and you came back and you didn't throw a pick until this past Monday, which was a difficult game. I think I kind of jinxed you a little bit on that one, so I'll take credit, but you've had a very successful career in being accurate, and you have a strong arm to where you're elusive, where we show you've only been sacked 7 times in your entire high school career in 23 games. How do you categorize yourself as a football player? Do you like to run or do you like to pass more? The numbers say you like to pass. Why?
I like to pass because I can throw the ball faster than anyone can run. And it's like in baseball, the shortstop falls down, bobbles the ball, picks it up, and still throws the guy out at first running full speed because the ball, your arm is faster than the other guy's feet.
Let's talk a little bit about the Virginia High School League, uber scoring game. It was an 81-74, unfortunately lost for you guys to West Potomac, if I'm correct. That was a quadruple overtime game. How do you play in a game like that? How do you survive, first of all, a game like that? And tell us what's going on the sidelines while you guys are there during that game.
Well, we felt like we gave them the game away with, I think, 4 turnovers or something. And credit to them, their quarterback's really great. I think he had like 300 yards passing and 100 yards rushing. He played really great that game. And it was just tough to lose in the end, but it was a great game. Both teams fought hard.
On the sideline as a leader of a team, when you're in say, the second overtime, and then you're going into the third overtime, how are you keeping your team going? How do you keep them motivated?
Well, we got where we didn't think anybody was going to stop us ever. And we were just so open for the one stop. I think the last drive of the game, I reached over the end zone, they called a fumble. We were going to go for 2 on that one. It would have won the game, but they called a fumble. So.
Now, Peter, looking at, almost 20 completions per game, 384 completions in your career, and obviously, catching the ball, throwing and catching the ball, it takes 2. Talk about some of your wide receivers this year.
Well, I think we have the best 6 or 7 pass catchers maybe ever in the northern region or whatever, because we got they're all young guys. They're all coming back next year. We have no senior receivers.
Wow.
And they work hard all year, and they know they're going to have fun because we're going to throw it around, so everyone gets ready to get there. Well, everyone's going to get numbers in our offense.
Now, who's your favorite target?
Well, it's different.
Putting you on the spot there.
It's different. Well, if it's a short, if I need it, if it's a 3rd and 4th down, I'm going to throw to Bryn Renner. But if I want the big play, I'm going up deep with Scott Williams.
All right, so definitely some targets there to look out for as the coaches from the region are evaluating this tape to see who his favorite targets are. Okay, Peter, we're gonna go through here and we're gonna talk a little bit about the rest of the Patriot District. You're gonna stick with us and give us some insight as some of these teams, as you've obviously played some of these guys. Before we do that, we want to throw up on the screen here for you folks at home to see what the current standings are in the Patriot District. Annandale's up there at 5-1, a team that also has a great quarterback, a little bit different style than Peter, of course. He likes to run, one of the leading rushers at quarterback. They're 5-3 overall, and they're looking to try to get into the playoffs at Division 6 level. The Oakton game at the end of the year will be a big one for them. Lee is there at 4-1 and 5-3 overall. West Potomac, a team that has kind of jumped up and made a name for itself this year, 4-1, 4-4. South County, out of nowhere in its second year, vying for a playoff spot, 3-2, 6-2 overall. Lake Braddock at 3-3 and 5-3. TC at 2-4, 4-5. West Springfield at 1-4 in the district and 2-6 overall. Hayfield still looking for its first win of the season. And as we jump right out of the current standings, Peter, I want to ask you about Hayfield. You know, they're a team that, you guys are going to get a chance to play against this week. What do you guys know about them, and how are you game planning for them?
We know they're a lot better athletically than they were last year, and they have a real tough quarterback, and Drew Maternick, and nobody wants to go 0-10, so they're definitely going to be playing hard against us.
Peter, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, obviously, you have that game against Hayfield, but a week, I know you guys hate to look a week ahead, but after that you have South County coming up, and you mentioned earlier as we were talking, can they get into a shootout with you guys? You guys are obviously a high-powered offense. What do you see developing in that game? Do you see another one of those, 57-50 type deal games?
I hope not. I hope we win by more than that. But it's going to be a battle. We're all friends. South County, West Springfield, real close, and it's just going to be exciting to play. I know they're going to be ready to play. They're telling me they're going to run for like 800 yards on us.
And you were telling me earlier that you're good friends with Jay Rowley, the quarterback over there. Tell us a little bit about him as well.
Well, he's definitely a tough guy. He pulls out all his fakes no matter what. He runs through every time he's going as hard as he can. He somehow just makes the plays that he needs to win.
South County has a big game coming up against West Potomac. West Potomac beat Lake Braddock and Lee. South County lost to both of those teams. So tell us a little bit about what South County has ahead of them, Peter, having played West Potomac. What is South County going to have to do? Obviously, Coach Bendorf over there, a great schemer. What is South County going to have to do scheme-wise to beat a team like West Potomac, having seen so much of them in that long, epic game? What are they going to have to do?
They're going to have to, I think, they can't run their 8-man front that they always run. They're going to have to send people out on their receivers, and don't let the slot receivers run up the field untouched, and then they won't be able to pass as easily.
All right, spoken from a man that knows the team quite well. We're going to jump right into Lee. This is a team, and you've seen this team over the last couple of years. Amir's has got a chance to cover Lee a whole bunch this year, and they're a team with a win over Annandale that could really, put the accent or exclamation point on their season. They've come a long way from the last couple of years. You've played against them years before and now. What's different about Lee now?
Well, Lee's definitely our biggest rival, and they have a lot of athletes. They all play hard. They all want to come flying. They all want to hit. And Brandon Cameron's a tough runner, tough to bring down. He's got moves in the field, and their quarterback's surprising with that option. Lets them make that option fake and run like 30, 40 yards down the field.
And Chris Oderson, another guy, as you mentioned, the quarterback that does run that offense very well. As a quarterback to quarterback, what else is he good at? People are speaking very highly of him and think he has a lot to do with why that team has progressed. Obviously, you mentioned Cameron being a guy, and I know Holston on the other side of the ball there is a speedy guy. Evaluate Oderson so far and what you've seen from him and what you think he's done.
He's just a tough runner. Like he's not very big, but whenever he's running, he's always falling forward, and he loves to do the ball fake, and he's good at throwing little seam passes to Holston.
I'll tell you what, I was watching Chris Otterson and a couple of games this season, and when he does do that fake that you were talking about, he really does get everybody on the field. His players, the other team's players, the spectators, everybody is wondering where that ball is at the moment. And then you see him, he's 5 yards away at that moment with the ball before you realize. Lee is playing Annandale, like you mentioned, this week, and that could very well still be the district championship game, even though Lee did have that loss to West Potomac this last week. So.
And so, Annandale is another team, Peter, that is a team that has been good in that district for quite a while. I think once Robinson left, it was kind of up for grabs, and I think Annandale has kind of, risen up there and taken the reins on that district. They have a tough game, like we mentioned with Lee. Tell us a little bit about Nathan Cartagena and his ability as a quarterback. He's a different style than you. You're a drop back. You like to dish it out there. He likes to run. Tell us a little bit about him and what you see from him, evaluating him from a quarterback's perspective.
He's the toughest player I've ever played against. He's always running hard. He's always moving his feet, and he just takes control of the game. If they're down, if it's a close game, he's getting the ball every time. No matter same play, he doesn't care. He's just running down the throat. Is
it possible that Annandale, in your opinion, could beat a team like an Oakton? I'm not sure how much you know about Oakton and the Concord there, but they're going to play in the last game of the season, and that game's going to have some implications on who goes where out of the Concord district. There's some scenarios there where Robinson could get a playoff berth if Annandale beats Oakton. Is that game possible, having seen Cartagena and what he's able to do?
Well, their defense, if their defense keeps it close, then Nate will take over the game if he wants to.
All right, Lake Braddock. That's a game this week, Mirza. Tell us a little bit about what Braddock's getting into and what they've been able to do so far this season.
All right. Well, Braddock, when they lost to West Potomac 2 weeks ago, we were thinking to ourselves, wow, they really shot themselves in the foot. But then you look at West Potomac, and even though they're 4-4 on the season, they're 4-1 in the Patriot District.
Right.
These boys get up for the big games.
Right.
And what Braddock was able to do was come back last week and play against you guys. And they were down, I believe, 21-7 at halftime before scoring 33 unanswered points to beat West Springfield 40-21. What they have this week coming up is Robinson, and that is a huge neighborhood rivalry. Even though it's no longer a Patriot District rivalry, it's still a huge neighborhood rivalry. And why they have been effective this season and why they have that 5-3 record is they've had 4 running backs step up in place of Jordan Russell, the injured running back. This week's game against Robinson has huge implications in terms of power points.
Right.
Either team, either Lake Braddock or Robinson, whoever wins that game is going to get some points that might push them just over the limit. So despite the 5-3 record, they are still in the hunt for that playoff berth.
Well, Lake Braddock beat Chantilly, which is that's a big win for them. Chantilly obviously getting all these power points, and later on in the show here, folks, we're going to show you all the PowerPoint rankings and where everybody's sitting, not in just the region, but in Division 5 and Division 6, and show you kind of how the playoff picture is shaping up. Before we get to playoffs, and before we let you go, Peter, we're going to put you on the hot seat here for a minute. Who's going to win the Northern Region Division 5, and who's going to win the Northern Region Division 6?
Division 5, Stonebridge Bulldogs.
It's a good boy.
Division 6, Westfield.
Another Bulldog. This man loves his Bulldogs.
Well,
Yeah,
that's right.
Safe picks there.
It's safe, but it's right. So that's what I like to hear.
Let's look around the region as well, and being a quarterback, you mentioned that you do keep in contact with some of these other quarterbacks and whatnot. Who is one of the guys that you look at as maybe one of the greats as well during this time being in this region? Look around the region and mention some of the guys that you think are on a pretty high playing level.
Terrence Glenn, definitely Terrence Glenn. Nate Cartagena, and I think Mike Glennon might get up there. He keeps doing well next year.
Mike Glennon, a junior over at Westfield and doing quite well for himself. Similar quarterback to Mr. Lalick here. He likes to drop back and pass. He's a big boy. And of course, Terrence Glenn would be the the quarterback over at Stonebridge.
More of a Cartagena type style.
Right.
He can also throw.
He can grit it out, and he likes to throw, and he's got a great running back as well over there. Wailu, I believe they call him.
Wailu.
I'm still trying to figure that one out. And of course, Cartagena, as you mentioned, the quarterback over at Annandale. Folks, we hope you'll come back and join us here on the rest of the Fairfax Sports Report. We want to thank Peter Lalick from West Springfield for joining us here tonight. Good luck to you, and we'll be looking for you on the big screen there at UVA.
All right, right, thank you.
Hey, welcome back to the Fairfax Sports Report here on the Fairfax Sports Network. I want to thank you guys for coming back, and want to thank, of course, Peter Lollick from West Springfield High School for coming on with us and giving us his expertise on the Patriot District. We wish him the best of luck at UVA next year and throughout the remainder of this season, and we'll be sure to be catching up with him next week after he breaks every VHSL record ever known to man for passing. Okay, guys, want to get started with the Connection Newspaper's Top 10 poll. Of course, we're talking about football, and you know, tuning into the Fairfax Sports Report, that's what you're going to get week in and week out. Plenty of football. As we're rounding out the football season here, Mirza, why don't you take the top 10 away and tell us who's where on the Connection Newspaper's top 10?
Have Stonebridge, of course, up at the top, almost a unanimous vote there with 39 points. Westfield, still, the top three are still the same. Westfield in the second place there with 37 points on the votes, and Chantilly with 32 votes. South County makes a huge leap from number 7 to number 4 with a very convincing win over a struggling Hayfield side. They have 24 points. Robinson actually stays at the same at the 5th spot with 23 points after a loss to Chantilly. Yorktown moves up from 8th to 6th with 17 votes. Edison from 9th to 7th. Oakton drops from 4th to 8th with 11 points after a disappointing loss to Herndon. Annandale is up there in the 9th spot with 10 points. With 10 points, and Lee with 9 points in the 10th spot.
Okay, folks, so taking a look at that top 10 at home, you can see that many teams have shifted. If you tune into this show every week, you can see, and of course from our graphic there, where teams have ended up. I think jumping right into the Concord District, that'll give us a chance to show you why teams have shaped up where they are in our top 10. We want to show you the current Concord District standings after this week of football. Of course, Westfield is still undefeated at 8-0, and they are flawless in the Concord District. A very difficult task to stay undefeated in the Concord District. They're at 4-0, and Chantilly also accomplishing that very difficult task. Somebody after this week will not any longer be undefeated in the Concord District, as those two top teams take each other on in one of the most anticipated games, not just in that Sully region, but in the northern region. 7-1 overall is Chantilly. Robinson at 3-2 and 5-3 overall. Oakton dropping down 2-3, 4-4 overall. Centerville 1-3 in the district with a 5-3 overall record. Herndon putting its first win in the district over Oakton this past week, a game I'm going to get a chance to tell you all about as I was there. Overall, they are at 4-4, and Fairfax still looking for their first district win. That may have to wait until next season. They are 1-7 overall. Want to ask you, Paul, right away. You're a guy that has had a lot to say about Chantilly. Of course, Mike Lally and Nate Warwick came on the show with us early in the year. We knew they were good. I don't know if we knew they were that good, although we look like geniuses now for having said that they were going to be pretty good. How good is Chantilly really? Are they the best team in the region?
I don't know about the best team in the region, but they're good. They're the real deal. They proved that against Robinson. They are mentally the toughest team in the region. When things went wrong against the Chargers this week, they didn't back down at all. Robinson drove to the red zone twice. They held them to field goals. Robinson drive 70 yards to score the game-tying point, stopped Mike and Tim Meyer both in successive plays. Wow. That's hard to do. They're going to win the close games. And if the Westfield game is close, they're going to win it.
So, in piggybacking on that, obviously that is the Fairfax Sports Network's big game. Yeah. You tell me why, Paul Frummelt, will Westfield win this game?
Okay, I just mentioned that if it's close, Chantilly's going to win. I don't think it's going to be close.
Wow.
I really, really like the Bulldogs here. Because you got Verbanek, you got Glennon getting better every single week. You have Tabbitt and change of pace running back Brian Kennedy. You got Kennedy also on defense, just knocking people around. They're like I said, their talent is emerging with that coaching staff, and I believe they're going to remain undefeated in the Concord, undefeated overall, and they're going to cause some problems in the Northern Region playoffs.
All right, you make some very interesting points. Obviously, Mike Glennon is who he is. We had Peter Lawlick on here with us telling us all about how good of a quarterback he really thinks he is, and that's coming from a Division I quarterback to what we believe is going to be another Division I quarterback in Mike Glennon. Obviously, the lineage is there, and he's done well for himself only as a junior. He's got a great receiving core in Josh Whitmer. Don't forget about Whitmer. He's a very big piece of that offense that makes that offense go. And I think he is the X factor. What I think a lot of people believe is that it's Glennon's show. And it is. He makes it go. But Tabbitt has a lot to do with that offense.
Most
If
definitely.
Tabbitt can get the run game going, I believe Westfield will be successful. But Chantilly has proven that they've held people not to just low scoring outputs, but they've really stopped the run. I was at the Oakton game versus Westfield on Westfield's homecoming when Westfield was trying to lose that game the best they could. Oakton fumbled on the goal line before the half, and that would have been a different game if they hadn't. They took the lead, did Oakton, into the half. And the point I'm trying to prove, though, is that Oakton shut down Westfield's running game, and they almost won that football game. A couple of mishaps, and they would be in a totally different position than they are right now. So from what I've seen of Westfield, I also saw them against Langley, and that was a game where their offense also didn't get going. Langley is not the most defensively talented team either. So I think defense is very underrated. It's not as sexy. It's not one of those things we like to talk about here a lot, especially on this show. We like to talk about the big rushing outputters and the big quarterbacks. But I really believe that Chantilly's defense is going to shut them down, and I think Chantilly takes this game.
What scares me is the loss of Austin Morris.
Right.
That he was a main cog in that defense, and as Coach Lally told me after the game, they could get lucky and get him for Westfield.
Yeah.
And they'll definitely have him for the playoffs if the playoffs happen, which we think they will. And the thing was, Robinson was able to throw and drive when they needed to against the Chargers, which scared me. Like I said, fortunately for Chantilly, they toughened up in the red zone and stopped them to field goals or not scoring. But when Robinson needed to drive, and Robinson has a great offense with the Meyer boys, but when they were able to drive, they could, and that scares me for the Chargers game against Westfield.
Mears, I want to get a little bit of your input here. I mean, you're a Robinson guy. You've covered them a little bit, and you know what they're capable of doing, and Paul's kind of, I guess, judging that game for what he thinks of Chantilly. We'll jump into Robinson here, though, while we can. Tell us a little bit about how potent Robinson's offense is, and did Chantilly just have an off night? I mean, giving up 20 points as a defense is pretty good in the Concord. They only did that in one game this year. That's the most points Chantilly's defense has given up all year. That's a lot.
Giving up 20 points to Robinson is really nothing to be ashamed about. This is a very, very good team. I mean, you have an offense that has more than just one weapon. We keep talking about Mike Meyer on this show, and we keep writing about him, as somebody who really runs the show over there, who can make that extra effort to get the ball into the end zone. He obviously has a nose for the end zone and what have you. But they have other players like David Laidi, like Winton Fox, like Alex Murray, who'll step up, and they'll take the ball and they'll take that pressure off. So giving up 20 points to Robinson is not an indication of how bad your defense is. Scoring 27 points against Robinson is. Now, when we're talking about the Chantilly-Westfield game, we asked if the Chantilly is the best team in the region. In my opinion, no, they're not the best, but yes, they are the most exciting because they're fresh to us. They don't have this history. They're not year in, year out playoff contenders. So it's good to see somebody new step up and get into that position. As far as Robinson goes, they have this huge game coming up that we were talking about earlier against Lake Braddock that has a lot of implications in the playoff picture here. And people are asking, are they out because of this loss? They're 5-3. They're not quite out because of that. They have Lake Braddock and then they have Westfield at the end. And pulling off 2-0 in those two games is going to be hard. Are they capable of doing it? Yes. In the words of Lake Braddock's coach, Jim Poitras, Robinson is clearly one of the best coach teams in the region. So they have something to play for, and I think they can pull it off because they are Robinson, because they're the Rams.
I'm going to say something about Chantilly's defense against the Rams, just so that 20 points you see. Robinson had a great field position all game. They intercepted the ball on the Chantilly 12-yard line for their first score, and that was the first time someone has scored an offensive touchdown against Chantilly in 14 quarters.
Wow.
So I mean that's something there, and also they had great field position each time they got those field goals. So I mean the Chargers defense played real tough. They just Robinson took advantage of their field position.
I want to forge ahead here a little bit, and since we're talking about it now, I want to get a chance to show the folks at home why this game for Robinson, as we stick with Robinson, is going to be so important. They're going to be playing Lake Braddock, and they'll finish off the season with Westfield. But we have a graphic that we want to show you folks at home about the Division VI playoff race. I think that will help put into perspective who falls where. Now, we have the cut there as you see the top 4 teams PowerPoint-wise. Of course, that really won't explain to you the exact way the playoffs are done, and I'll just give you folks at home a quick insight as to how it's truly done. The district champion from each of the districts definitely goes into the playoffs. And then it's the next highest power-pointed teams following in for Division VI and for Division V. Now, we talked about Robinson. Are they in? Are they out? It's a big thing for Robinson, being a team that's made the playoffs, so many years in a row under Coach Bendorf. Right now, they're struggling there at the 6th position, PowerPoint-wise, in the Division VI playoff race, just below the cut. Westfield is a lock at this point with a 26.1 power rating, and it's looking like they're the Concord District champion. And Chantilly may have something to say about that, this week. But Chantilly is also looking like they're going to be a lock. And Oakton, of course, with playing that difficult schedule, they're there at 22.9 power points and in 3rd place in the Division VI playoff race, even though they've lost a couple games here, guys. So Annandale is a team that they'll play at the end of the season that's also going to give Oakton some more power points. So Robinson right there, as you see them at number 6, is going to need to beat Lake Braddock in this week's game, and next week's game they're going to be playing number 1 Westfield. So that is a tall order. There's a lot of scenarios that they're doing over there at Robinson High School that's going to see whether that team gets in or gets out. Basically, they need Annandale to beat Oakton, and I think that that doesn't necessarily automatically get Robinson in at this point. A lot of other things have to happen still, but they're going to be rooting. They're going to be some Adams fans for the next couple weeks because that's a big piece of the puzzle that they need to happen. Although, Mirza, I do want to ask you a little bit about good counsel because, nobody at Robinson likes to talk about the good counsel game in a negative aspect because it's a good game for them. Good Counsel is a private school that they play that is not part of the Virginia High School League, so they don't get power points from playing that game. Now, it's a good game because it helps a team like Robinson play another skilled team, and they get experience from that game. But mathematically, PowerPoint-wise, they don't get any points from that. And right now, they're in the number 6 spot. They could be using some points from any other team in the region that they could be using some points from to possibly get into the playoff race here.
Well, here are a couple. I was trying to think about earlier who could have been a better game for Robinson at that point. And not that they really have total control over who they play, but let's say if they played a team like Yorktown, a 7-1 team who's beaten some big teams, who's beaten an Edison who has a lot of points. You get that win over Yorktown, which is a probable win for Robinson. I'm not going to say anything as a lock-in, but a probable win for Robinson over a 7-1 Yorktown team who beats Edison, you're getting power points. And you'll see later on Yorktown is ranked very high in Division V power points. Playing an out-of-region game, like you said, it was a good experience for Robinson. They played a good team. It prepares them to play against their region opponents better. But I think that should be left for preseason and not necessarily during a time when things count. And unfortunately for them, I think it has hurt them. I don't think that they're going to admit to that if you ask them. But
right. And looking at the possibilities as to there's kind of a double-edged sword here. We're questioning what Robinson did in playing good counsel because of PowerPoint values. I think there's a lot to be said for just playing the game because it's a good game. But I have to say, on the other edge of that sword, the problem with Robinson is that they're too damn good. Okay, I'm just going to be honest here. Not a lot of teams want to play Robinson. Not a lot of folks at home know this, but the way that games are scheduled in this 2-year cycle that does go on is that it's called a request sheet. There's a couple different names for it, but it's a request sheet, really, and a lot of teams rank from 1 through 23 out of the Northern Region's teams, not counting the teams they have to play in their district, who they want to play in that order, from 1 being a team they definitely want to play to 23 being a team they don't want to play. And Robinson is the most 23rd ranked team on that paper. They will not get a lot of 1s. I don't think you'll see Robinson ranked at 1 for many teams. Nobody wants to play Robinson because, let's be honest, they're going to lose. I mean, I think, this year it's been a little bit different with the Rams, but I think asking them to not play the good counsel game and play another team in the region is a tall order, just because I think they learn more from a game like a good counsel than they would from beating up on, say, a South Lakes. And I don't mean anything bad against South Lakes, but that's not a game that South Lakes will win. But it will give Robinson the points it needs to get into the playoff picture.
And one more thing, as long as we're on this issue, I want to say hats off to them for playing that game, because it is a good game. The spectators have something to watch when they play a good council team, as opposed to if they're playing maybe one of the weaker teams in the region that they can just roll over, and it's just another week of Robinson winning. It's
Absolutely.
not exciting.
No, absolutely, and they're giving a good product out there, and people are coming to those games. That's a big battle between public, private school that people want to say. They've been questioning for years, who's better? I think that the last 2 years, it's been a 1-1 split. So if they continue to play that private school, public school battle, I guess we'll find out. I want to talk a little bit about Oakton. And first of all, before we get into the Oakton football game versus Herndon, we want to send from the Fairfax Sports Network to the Oakton and Vienna community and friends of Christopher Kearns our heartfelt sorrow for the loss of the swimmer and lacrosse player at Oakton High School who was killed in a car accident over the weekend. Unfortunately, it was something that community had to go through. What we know as of now is that Kearns was a passenger in a car with his friend, and alcohol was a factor in the crash. And I believe that there will be further action taken because of that fact. But we do want to make sure that the Oakton community knows that the Fairfax Sports Network has the Kearns family and the Oakton community in their thoughts. What was in the Oakton football team's thoughts during that game against Herndon, which was a loss, was that they were mentally exhausted. I'm not going to make excuses for this team because they were out there and in between the grid of that football field, Oakton was a football team that was playing football. But everything else that happened around that team leading up to that game, which was a meeting on Sunday, coming in and finding out about this from Coach Joe Thompson, from spending all day Monday, this was a Monday game, Monday at the crash site. This kid was a very popular kid and had a very big emotional toll on the school as a whole. It was not normal business as usual at Oakton, and I think that had to do something with their level of competitive spirit. On the other hand, Herndon played the most incredible game of football I have ever seen Herndon play. It was complete. Zay Lopez, the quarterback at Herndon, threw for 4 touchdowns and also rushed for a touchdown. Guys, we've seen Lopez a couple times this year. Did you think he had a game like that in him?
I didn't. I saw him against Parkview, and that might have been skewed because how good Parkview is. But I saw pressure constantly on Lopez. I thought, I think he's a very talented player. I think he can make those throws. I didn't see him get enough time, so I didn't think that he would be able to. I mean, all that pressure on him, I didn't think he'd be able to have a game like that. But obviously, I was wrong. Well,
that's the biggest scoring output of Zay Lopez's career over at Herndon High School. I talked to Coach Tommy Meyer after the game, and he said, "Look, this is a blue-collar kind of kid. Not meaning his economic level of life, but or status, but on the football field, he's a blue-collar guy. He's not going to get out there and chuck the ball downfield, although he can. He's going to get out there and he's going to rough it up. He's going to run. The first 4 touchdowns were rushing touchdowns. 2 went for 1-yard plunges. The other 2 were for about 13, 14 yards each. He also threw to tight end Tyler Bennett for the game-clinching score as Oakton came back and almost tied the thing up, almost sent it into overtime, but Ryan Harris, sophomore quarterback over at Oakton High School, was intercepted on the very last play to end the game. So nothing against Harris. He's learning, and that kid is going to be something special for Oakton High School. So big win for Herndon. They're going to be taking on Centerville this week, guys. That could be a potentially interesting game. No playoff implications here for either team. Coach Tommy Meyer told me after the game, the biggest compliment to a coach is that even when you're out of the playoffs, the kids keep playing. And I think that they showed that this week, beating up an Oakton team that should have been able to put Herndon away pretty easily. Before I move on, I got to say that if you were at the Oakton game, you saw one of the most incredible catches ever at any level of high school. Jared Green made the most incredible touchdown catch I have ever seen. The kid made a one-handed, don't even know what to call it, but it was just one of those things that you couldn't explain if you wanted to. If you can get your hand on some video of it, I know that the video is out there because I saw it. It was an incredible catch. So kudos to Jared Green. Oakton's going to look to bounce back this week against Fairfax. All right, let's jump right in, of course, to the Division 5 playoff race as we have the Division 5 PowerPoint ratings for you at home before we jump in to the Liberty District. Same thing here. We talked about the cut being right under number 4, but some of those are going to be district champions, and we'll be looking for some other power-pointed teams to jump into the Division 5 playoff race. Stonebridge is a lock there at number 1. One of the highest power-pointed Division 5 teams in the state. Chantilly just jumped ahead of them this week in the Northern Region's top 10, whether it's 5 or 6, it doesn't matter in that perspective. Yorktown there, right behind Stonebridge. Yorktown's just kind of came out of nowhere this year, and good for the Patriots. South County, of course, we talked about with Peter Lollick. They're going to be playing them in the final game of the season, and they'll look to play spoiler to South County's playoff hopes there. You see Edison right underneath there. Edison lost to Yorktown, but got a big bounce-back win over Loudon Valley down there at the bottom, as you can see at number 7 at 19.4 power points. Edison is fueled by that win. Look at Marshall, slowly creeping up. Marshall, 7-1, the first time they've done that, and we'll tell you when we talk about Marshall, since 1993. So Marshall jumping up. The game between Marshall and Madison, the 5 and the 6 teams right there, that will be the game of the year. That will be, mark my words, the game of the year. It's a rivalry, and it also has Division 5 playoff PowerPoints written all over it. Marshall could potentially get into the playoffs for the first time since God created the earth. Loudon Valley there at number 7, Mount Vernon at number 8, of course, Wakefield at 9, and South Lakes at 10. Those guys are pretty much out of it. But the 5 and the 6 right there, that's going to be an incredible game. Paul, as we jump into the Liberty District here, I want to give you a chance to give us the rundown, of course, on the current standings in the Liberty District. And the reason we're going to let you do that is because you cover the Stonebridge Bulldogs, a team that our guest Peter Lollick said was going to be a lock for the Division 5 Northern Region Championship. Paul, tell us about the current standings in the Liberty District.
Well, I believe we have a graphic for it up here. We got Stonebridge at 5-0 and 8-0 overall. Marshall, I mean, look at Marshall and Madison, only a game behind the Bulldogs. Marshall at 4-1 and 7-1 overall. Madison 4-1, 5-3 overall. You got Woodson, they got the Cavaliers at 3-2 in the district and 4-4 overall. Langley drops to 2-3 and 2-6 overall. You have South Lakes at 1-4 and 2-6 overall. McLean 1-4 and 1-7, and then you got TJ there at the bottom at 0-5. But 2-6 overall.
And if you notice something there at home, folks, we might not get a chance to touch on it too much as we talk about some of the powerhouse programs here in the Liberty District. But McLean's got its first win of the year, and want to send our congratulations out to the McLean Highlanders who won their first game. Senior Torrey Byro scored 5 touchdowns, scored every single point in the 36-20 victory over Thomas Jefferson. So McLean's getting into the win column. Paul, tell us all about Stonebridge and what they're going to be able to do here against maybe their toughest competition of the year. I normally wouldn't say this, but their toughest competition of the year could possibly be Marshall.
Well, you also have the Oakton game.
After the Oakton, in the district.
Second half of the season, this will be the toughest game of the year. And Marshall's surprising everybody. You know, like I said, 4-1 and 7-1 overall for the Statesmen. Stonebridge has been cruising. They've been cruising pretty much all year. They're going to continue to cruise. But hopefully their heads haven't gotten so big.
Right.
And maybe a close game about Marshall is the best thing that can happen to the Bulldogs. Maybe a wake-up call, say, hey, you're not everything you're supposed to be here. Marshall can come up and scare you. I think Stonebridge is going to win, but hopefully for the Bulldogs, it's going to be a close game.
If Marshall were to potentially jump up and somehow win this game, that would be the biggest win for that program ever. I don't care about the state championship. I don't care about any of it. That would be the biggest win for this program ever. So that's a true PowerPoint beast this week. Stonebridge at Marshall. Marshall is 7-1 for the first time since 1993 when they went 8-3. Of course, they went on a playoff run themselves during that 8-3 period. Stonebridge at Marshall, as we mentioned, is the biggest PowerPointed game on the schedule. It's got a lot of implications.
Marshall's on the bubble right now.
And Marshall is on the bubble, correct, Paul? I mean, you've got a team in Marshall that just defeated South Lakes 23-19. They did so with, and this is South Lakes we're talking about. They barely beat South Lakes, but they've done what they've had to do to win. 37 seconds left. Quarterback Harold Sweet hits Josh Earl for a 25-yard touchdown pass and takes that victory right out of the clutches of South Lakes, which needed that so bad for that rest in school. Chris Hurlbert, the hero of that game, carried the ball 26 times for 130 yards. So Marshall, a team, want to get a chance to show it to you briefly, real quick, where they sit in the Division V PowerPoint race. I'm going to throw that graphic up there for you just so you folks can see just how important this game is going to be for Marshall there at number 5. If they can beat Stonebridge, they will go to the Division V playoffs, and there is still a chance, even if they don't win that game, that if they beat Madison and other things happen, they could get in.
If they beat Stonebridge, they control their own destiny. If not, then they'll have to win the last game and see what happens.
All right, Mirza, tell us a little bit about Woodson. They lost to Stonebridge this week. I don't think anybody expected them necessarily to win, but this is a team that's been young this year. We've talked about it a bunch on this show. Lawrence Nosp has carried them. Let's talk a little bit, though, about Woodson and what they've done this season. They've turned it around after a very difficult year last year.
They've done an unbelievable job there over there, I think, especially with the first-year coach in there. What I want to concentrate on here is they're 4-4, and I've said a number of times throughout the year, if they could go 3-7 and equal their last year's record, that would be an accomplishment for them. They're past that. They're 4-4. They have 2 games left on the season against Langley and against Thomas Jefferson. Now, that last game against Jefferson, I believe they should win. That will be their 500 victory. They could go 5-5. But the Langley game will really depend on whether Lawrence Nosp can show up and control the game. And I think they have a chance of winning that game. The standings tell us they definitely do. I think they will struggle a little bit against Langley's size on the lines. And I don't know. I mean, it's a tough call, but they could go as far as 6-4, which would double their last year's record. And I think that is a tremendous accomplishment for a program such as Woodson.
Okay, so I was at the Madison-Langley game, one of the only games played on Friday. Of course, both coaches, Madison coach Gordon Live, agreed to play because Langley coach John Howerton wanted to play. And I'll tell you why they wanted to play. They're a run team. Both teams are run teams. So they played in that sloppy, wet mess. Although it didn't end up being too bad out there on Langley's home field. They did a good job getting that field ready. And those kids played an incredible game. Madison, of course, got the victory over Langley. And I've never seen Langley so frustrated or upset. And I really believe that Langley's going to come out strong this week. So we'll see what Langley's able to do this week. This week, Jefferson takes on Madison. So Madison needs to win that game to keep its hopes alive, of course, to set up that big PowerPoint game at the end of the year with rival Marshall. Folks, want to get right into the National District here. The National District has been one that has stumped us a little bit this year. Mirza, why don't you tell us a little bit about what they've been able to do over there? Yorktown sitting up on top.
Yorktown obviously on top of the district with the 4-1 district record and that huge win over Edison a couple of weeks ago. They're 7-1 overall. Edison dropping 2 games in a row to South County and Yorktown. They're 6-2 overall, 4-1 in the district. Loudon Valley right behind them, 3-2. Mount Vernon 3-2 in the district. Falls Church 2-3, 2-6 overall. Washington and Lee also has that 2-3 mark. They also had a huge win over Loudon Valley earlier on,
right.
2-6 mark overall. Wakefield 1-3, 3-5 overall, and a good team that they have over there. And Stewart 0-5 and 0-8 overall. Now I'd like to point out that last year we had 3 teams out of the National District go 1-9.
Right.
This year, 1 team will probably have that record. And other than that, it's a district that's on the rise, especially with Yorktown and Edison doing so well.
That's a great point. It's a much improved district, and those guys are looking to obviously keep improving. I think the level of competition has evened out, and they're playing some other schools out of the region as well to help, I guess, make up for the disparity between teams. I want to talk a little bit about Edison's big win over Loudoun Valley and what it did for the Eagles, got them back into the playoff picture, Mirza.
Definitely. The 13-7 win over Valley. Sean Lloyd, the quarterback, goes 14 for 26 for 242 yards in that game. Kevin Carter, the junior that stepped up into that running back slot, had 84 yards and 11 carries. But he also had 3 catches for 43 yards and that 1 touchdown that really pushed them away from Loudoun Valley and got him the win. A huge win, playoff implications.
It also shows how much the National has improved. Last year, Valley, formerly a double A team, runs through the National, just goes undefeated. Now they're sitting with 2 losses already in the National District.
All right, folks, of course, here on the Fairfax Sports Report, you get your football fix every single week with us guys and our special guests. This week, like last week, we're going to give you the insight on the Northern Region Field Hockey Tournament. Of course, we are joined by the wonderful coach over at Oakton High School. Lizzie McManus is on the phone with us, running an incredible tournament over there. 2 fields going on at the same time throughout the duration of this tournament. Lizzie, what's going on? Who's won tonight? We know we had some incredible matchups between Chantilly and Woodson, and Westfield took on Langley. What's your report over there from home base?
Actually, it was kind of an exciting night. There was an upset, and the finals will be actually a Concord and Liberty team playing in that, which is nice.
Wow.
Unlike last year.
Wow. All right, so give us the insight, Lizzie. Who did what, and give us try to capture the exciting level of play there at your home base over at Oakton.
Well, we'll go on field 1 first, the Woodson Chantilly game, which should have been a great match, but it turned into a nice little game for Woodson, actually. Chantilly scored first about halfway through the first half, but Woodson answered 2 minutes after that with a strong goal by number 16, Olivia Galvin. And then 3 minutes later scored again off a goal by Tamara Brown.
Wow.
And then less than a minute into that scored again by Olivia Galvin. And then finished it off in the second half with a goal by Meg Saxton. So that was a 4-1 game.
Wow. So Woodson off to a great tournament start there. This is a team that was stumped a little bit last year. And tell us a little bit about your assessment of Woodson. Are they a team? Is this a fluke game, or are they going to be able to come in and put up that many goals every game?
Oh, that was not a fluke at all. That was the way Woodson knows how to play. I mean, they have a fantastic team over there, offensively, and especially defensively. Their defense is their strength. But it was odd. It's almost like they needed that goal to be scored against them to start playing, because Chantilly came out strong against them. And then they had a couple corner opportunities, I believe, and then finally finished on one. But Woodson said, no way, and came back.
All right, so you let the cat out of the bag there.
Tell us about my Bulldogs.
You said that it was going to be a Liberty and
I did.
Concord matchup. So that's meaning that Westfield defeated Langley, and I guess you're getting a little revenge there after you guys dropped to Langley there in the quarters. Tell us a little bit about the Westfield-Langley game, and was that an exciting game?
It was exciting because Langley came out really strong, and I was after Langley's game against us, I really thought they were going to just finish that game. But though they had a lot of scoring opportunities in the first half, Westfield actually went on the board first off a goal by Chris May, I believe her name is. Mm-hmm. And then into the second half, it remained 1-0 for the first half. And then the second half, they scored again with about 50 seconds into the half off a goal by Paige Harrison scored the first goal. Chris May scored the second goal.
Okay, Paige.
And then Langley, though they were being beaten 2-0, never stopped. They did put a goal in by Katie Knapp halfway through the second half, and they put so much pressure on at the end of the game. It was almost going to go into overtime. They didn't stop the whole time. So It was a nice game, and that was a nice upset. And there was a number 4 and a number 1 team in the finals, which is nice.
So we've got Woodson defeats Chantilly 4-1 to advance to the Northern Region Field Hockey Championship against Westfield, which defeated Langley at 2-1. This game will be Friday, November 3rd at 7 p.m. at Oakton High School. Lizzie and the staff at Oakton putting on an incredible tournament over there. They've got everything from food to two fields, to practice fields, to stands,
It's a great
Bermuda, to everything. So putting on a heck of a tournament. Of course, Lizzie, while we've got you on the phone, I want to send out our condolences to your Oakton community for your loss this week, and want to thank you for joining us here on the Fairfax Sports Report.
Well, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, guys, so before we get going here, we've got about a minute left. We've got Woodson versus Westfield. Paul, Westfield coming. We've talked about them. What happened?
Westfield has beaten Edison, who beat them 3-1 in the regular season. Beat Marshall, defending region champions, and now beat Langley. When I talked to the players after the game against Edison, they said the seniors aren't ready to leave. Right. And they're playing like it. I said, against Edison, the game I saw was the best I've seen Westfield play this year. So, I mean, they're hitting their stride, and they have a chance against Woodson.
Woodson, real quick, Mirza.
Woodson, they started out the tournament 1-0 win over West Springfield. It took a last-minute save from the goalkeeper, Louis Garricky, to keep that win. They struggled against Robinson, but they win. They know how to win even when they struggle, and they exploded in this game, as you heard from Coach McManus there, with a 4-1 victory. And I think it's not a surprise to see them in the region finals again and representing the region in the state tournament.
Well, as they say, they play the games for a reason, folks. But if you had asked who was going to be in the Northern Region Championship game, I think people would have picked Westfield and Woodson. So they play the games, but I guess they really shouldn't. Okay. Just want to get to our underwriters before we get going here, and want to tell you all about the FSN Game of the Week. It's going to be Westfield at Chantilly. Woo! That's going to be the game of the year, not just the FSN Game of the Week. Great offense taking on a great defense. FSN Game of the Week re-airs on Channel 10. Robinson at Oakton. It was taped on October 20th. That was an incredible game, of course, right down to the wire there. Hey, we're on the web. Go to www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. You can find photos. You can also find the email to email us your comments and thoughts on what we should do, what we shouldn't do, and who we haven't talked about enough this year on the Fairfax Sports Report. So send us your feedback and go to the website to find out how to do so. I want to thank CCI Screen Printing, 703-978-0257, for being one of our fantastic underwriters. And Quality Care Ford Service Center, servicing all makes and models at 703-383-6299. Guys, got about 30 seconds left. Who wins the Northern Region Championship for football? Division 6 Mirza and Division 5. Spit them out real quick.
Westfield Stonebridge, you can't go against them.
Go with my boy Lalick, Westfield Stonebridge. Go Bulldogs.
I will personally jinx Oakton by saying they're going to make a comeback and do exactly what they did last year for the Division 6 title. And Stonebridge, no one's beating Stonebridge.
No.
Sorry, Marshall, I know that we pumped you up, but
Coach Thompson's running a great program.
Speaking of great programs, join us every week here on the Fairfax Sports Report.
Awesome.
All right, guys, good show. Here's